Welcome to episode 2 of Football Tactics Explained. This episode will cover formations, which is the first tactical aspect that you will need to understand when analyzing a football match. Some people were wondering about my experience analyzing football tactics in the previous video. I've been following the Premier League my entire life, and I've been a soccer coach at the youth levels. This past season, I worked on the staff of one of the top university football teams in the United States. My main job wasn't as a video analyst, but in my role, I was able to create a couple of video analysis and data analysis for the coaching staff. Now let's get started. Before we start talking about formations, it's important to understand that football is played in 3 different phases. These phases include the attacking phase, the defensive phase, and the transitional phase. These are the 3 broad phases of a football match, and you could get even more in depth with the different phases of attacking and defending, but we're going to stick to these 3 broad phases for now. Formations are a very misunderstood topic by casual fans in football. An overarching and absolute formation for a team does not exist. There is no such thing as a team playing a 4-4-2, a 4-3-3, or a 4-2-3-1. In this video, I'm going to use the second match between Manchester City and Tottenham from this year's Premier League season. We can see that from the pre-match team sheets, Manchester City will be playing a 4-3-3, while Tottenham will be using a 3-4-3. We will see in a minute why this isn't true. Football has evolved to a point where teams will have at least an attacking shape and a defensive shape. Some more complex teams will even have different structures for the different phases of attacking and defending. For example, a team might use different formations when attacking in possession versus attacking during a counterattack. A formation is the most basic tactical view of a match, and recognizing that the formations a team uses during each phase of play is an important first step for analyzing a match tactically. When you sit down and watch a match, ask yourself where the players are on the pitch. Stop and count how many players you see and where they are. Let's go back to the Manchester City and Tottenham game to spot some formations. Here I've paused the game with Tottenham in possession. Try and pick out the formation that they're using while in possession. When I was analyzing this game, when Tottenham had possession, it looked like they were playing a 3-4-3 with a 4-man midfield, 3 defenders, and 3 up top. Now, if we look at Tottenham when City has possession, you can see a much different picture. Try and pick out the formation again. What I found from my analysis was, when Manchester City had possession of the ball, Tottenham shifted into a 5-4-1 formation. Let's also look at Manchester City in possession because this is a fun one. Try and pick out what formation Manchester City is using when in possession. When I was analyzing this game, I had City running a 2-3-5 formation. Not a typical formation you would see from a team or that you would think of. This is just one example of how teams use 2 different formations or systems when attacking versus defending. So usually when I'm first beginning my analysis, I'll nail down what formations each team is using in attack versus defense before moving on. If you're wondering about all the different formations that are typically used in football, there are a couple good ways to research them. Apart from watching lots of football and observing the different formations that are used in attack and defense, researching them online is a great way to learn some new formations, but my personal favorite way to learn formations is through playing FIFA or Football Manager. FIFA and Football Manager give a good list of the many formations that you'll see in football. Playing the game with these formations will make you more familiar with them and will also help you understand where the strengths and weaknesses are. YouTube also has a ton of videos on different formations, and I'll be looking to make some videos on different formations in the future. Something else that I've noticed from analyzing games is that the beginning of the games tends to be a little bit more chaotic than usual. Footballers are humans too, and it takes a couple of minutes at the beginning of the game for their nerves and the game to settle down and for the tactical themes to become clear. Tactical ideas can still be present during the first couple of minutes, but they tend to be a little bit harder to spot. I find that many actions during this period are simply from player decision making, and make sure just to keep this in mind the next time you sit down to analyze a match. After you've identified what formations each team is using during the different phases, there are 3 different things that you should look for. First, look for the transitional players. If we go back to our Tottenham and Manchester City example, Tottenham has a back 3 in attack and a back 5 in defense. Try to find the players who transition between positions or play different positions in the different phases. In this example, Sessegnon and Emerson Royal are the transition players who drop into defense in the transition. You can see in this example how Emerson and Sessegnon, once Tottenham gain possession, transition straight into midfield. Having the wingbacks drop into the back 5 is a very common theme in a back 3 formation. But there are also other transition players in this example. Both Son and Kulusevski drop from the wing into midfield to create a 4-man midfield and defense. The reason transition players are so important is because that's where teams can potentially target the opposition, as those players need time to transition, and they can be used as a potential target to go after. The next thing to look for is basic overloads that occur from the formations clashing against each other. An overload is where more players from one team are in an area than the other team. Overloads are everything in football, as creating an overload and having more players in one area than the other team is a huge advantage. Why do you think teams quote unquote park the bus and sit back like one could say Tottenham did against Manchester City, it's because with more players back in defense and midfield, it's much harder to create those overloads, which makes it harder to create chances. Overloads can also occur where one team has a player in an area where the opposition has zero. The last thing to look for in your analysis is finding how many players are involved in each phase of play for each team. Don't be fooled by the players you might not think are involved. In terms of attacking, Manchester City are a team that I feel like use all 11 players in both the attacking and defensive phase. Although you might not think Ederson is always creating attacking chances, City still uses his incredible passing abilities to occasionally slip forwards and behind, or use it to pick out a free man with a pinpoint pass to bypass the press. If we look at Tottenham's case, Conte loves to use his outside center backs of his back three to build up. I would consider 9 of Tottenham's outfield players to be a part of Tottenham's build-up, excluding the central center back and the goalkeeper. Now, if you understand all of this, you already have a pretty high-level view of the game. However, you still need to make sure you're checking and re-looking every few minutes to see how players are moving and how it fits into the overall picture. You can then use this big picture understanding to look deeper into the tactics. A big inspiration of this episode comes from Reddit user DivineMan, who created an incredible thread on how to analyze matches 9 years ago. I used many of his examples in this video, and I wanted to use this video as a way to further demonstrate his ideas. The link is in the description to his thread if you're interested.